Have you ever wondered what really happens when you vanish? When you stop texting, stop watching their stories, stop reacting, and just go quiet? Do they feel relief, regret, panic, or nothing at all? And why does silence sometimes hit harder than words ever could? Let's talk about it. Because most people tell us to move on or go no contact, but they rarely explain what actually happens on the other side. What goes on in their mind when the person who was always there suddenly isn't? Today, we're diving into that. Not to manipulate anyone, not to play games, but to understand human psychology in a real, grounded way. And more importantly, to understand what this silence does for us. Let's start at the beginning. After a breakup, emotions are messy. Maybe they ended it, maybe it was mutual, maybe it blindsided us. But in many cases, even after things end, we're still there. We still reply, we still check in, we still watch their updates, we stay available. And that availability feels normal. It feels loving. It feels mature. But here's the truth. When we stay present, we make it easy for them. They don't have to wonder how we're doing. They don't have to question whether we care. Every text answers that. Every reply confirms it. Our presence removes mystery. Now imagine the opposite. One day, we stop. No more replies, no more views, no more reactions, no drama, no announcement. Just silence. That silence creates a gap, and the human brain does not like gaps. Psychologists have studied something called the Zeigarnik effect, which shows that people remember unfinished situations more than completed ones. When something feels incomplete, the mind keeps returning to it. It loops. It searches for answers. When we disappear without explanation, we become that unfinished story. Suddenly, they don't know how we feel. They don't know if we're angry, healed, dating, struggling, or thriving. And that not knowing is powerful, because certainty brings calm, but uncertainty creates tension, and tension holds attention. The shift in control. During the relationship, especially toward the end, there's usually a shift in control. One person pulls back, the other tries harder. One becomes uncertain, the other becomes more available. If we were the ones still reaching out after the breakup, then in some ways, they still had control. They knew we would respond. They knew they could check in if they felt lonely. They knew we were emotionally accessible. Even if they didn't want us back, they still had access. When we disappear, that access disappears too. And that's when something changes. It's not always about love at that moment. It's often about control, about comfort, about knowing someone is still there if needed. When that comfort is removed, it creates a new emotion, not necessarily heartbreak, but instability. Now they might think, wait, why hasn't he reached out? Or why isn't she reacting anymore? Or did they really move on? The dynamic shifts. The emotional balance changes. And for the first time since the breakup, they may feel the absence instead of us feeling it alone. Why silence hits harder than words? We often think that explaining ourselves will make someone understand our value. We believe that if we say the right thing, show enough care, or prove our loyalty, they'll come back. But here's something important. Words can be debated. Silence cannot. When we argue, explain, or defend ourselves, they can respond. They can disagree. They can justify their choice. But when we disappear, there is nothing to argue with. Silence forces reflection. A study published in the journal Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin found that uncertainty in relationships increases mental focus on the partner. When people don't know where they stand, they think about it more. So when we stop clarifying, stop chasing, and stop reassuring, we create space. And in that space,
Their mind fills in the blanks. They might remember the good moments more clearly. They might question whether they made the right decision. They might replay conversations they once ignored. And that replaying, that doesn't happen when we're constantly present. The chemical side of missing someone. Let's make this even simpler. Relationships aren't just emotional, they're chemical. When we're with someone, our brain releases dopamine, which is linked to desire and reward. It releases oxytocin, which builds bonding. Over time, the brain gets used to that connection. When we disappear, that supply suddenly stops, and the brain notices. It's similar to withdrawal. The person may not consciously think, "I miss them," at first. Instead, they may feel restless, curious, irritated, or slightly anxious without knowing why. That's because the emotional routine has been disrupted. And here's the interesting part. The brain doesn't separate good intensity from bad intensity. It just reacts to intensity. Our silence creates emotional intensity. They might start checking our profile, asking mutual friends about us, wondering who we're with. Even if they don't want to admit it, something shifts inside. Not because we begged, but because we stopped. When they see you moving on. Now let's talk about the moment that often changes everything. Time passes, weeks, maybe months. Then one day, they see it. A photo, a mention, a sign that we're okay, maybe even with someone new. And this is where emotions get real. Jealousy doesn't always mean they want us back. Sometimes it means they're surprised someone else values what they walked away from. When another person chooses us, it sends a strong signal. It says, "You are wanted." And that signal can feel louder than any text we ever sent. Research from the University of California has shown that social comparison plays a major role in romantic jealousy. When people see their ex with someone new, it triggers comparison and self-questioning. Was I wrong? Did I give up too soon? Why does he look happy? Our happiness, especially when it's genuine, can hit deeper than our sadness ever did. And the key word here is genuine. Not staged, not fake, not forced. Real growth, real progress, real peace. That's what makes the biggest impact.
But here's the honest part. Not every ex comes back, and we need to say that clearly. Sometimes they truly move on. Sometimes the relationship didn't have enough depth to create a lasting pull. Sometimes they find someone else and build something new. And that's okay. Because disappearing was never meant to be a trick to win someone back. It's a boundary. It's a statement that says, if you choose to leave, you lose access. It protects our dignity. It protects our healing. It keeps us from living in emotional limbo. When we stay half-connected, we stay half-stuck. When we fully step away, we fully begin again. And that beginning is for us, not for them. The long-term impact of your absence. Here's something many people don't realize. The brain doesn't delete emotional connections easily. It stores them. Even years later, a song, a place, or a memory can reactivate old feelings. Neural pathways formed during relationships stay dormant, not erased. When we vanish completely, those pathways freeze in their last state. There's no gradual fading through casual contact, no updated version of us being just friends. We become a closed chapter, but not a rewritten one. And sometimes, much later, that chapter reopens in their mind. That's why people reconnect years after a breakup, not because they forgot, but because the memory never fully updated. So what does your ex feel when you suddenly disappear? At first, maybe relief, then curiosity, then confusion, then possibly reflection. Sometimes jealousy, sometimes regret, sometimes just a quiet awareness that something real is no longer accessible. But the deeper question is not what they feel, it's what we gain. We gain self-respect. We gain emotional clarity. We gain space to rebuild. We stop performing for someone who chose not to stay. And ironically, that strength is what often makes someone reconsider. Not begging, not convincing, not proving, but walking away with calm confidence. Because when we stop chasing, we shift from needing to being needed. And whether they come back or not, we are no longer stuck waiting. So if you're in that moment right now, phone in hand, fighting the urge to text, remember this. Your silence is not weakness, it's power. It's space for both of you to feel the true weight of the breakup. It's the only way to see what remains when attention is removed. And whatever they feel when you disappear, let them feel it. That part is theirs. Our part is building a life so steady, so grounded, and so fulfilling that we don't need anyone to validate it. Now tell us in the comments, have you ever disappeared and watched what happened? Or have you been on the other side, suddenly realizing someone was truly gone? Let's talk about it. Because understanding this isn't about playing games, it's about protecting our hearts while growing stronger. And sometimes the loudest message we can send is silence.